you so much for meeting with us. This is a follow-up from our first interview we did with you for EDM World Magazine, issue 32. And so I'm not going to ask you the same questions, obviously. So this will be a little bit more in-depth, different types of questions. So before the invention of DAWs, you first started making music using computer tracking programs, sequencing, and sample manipulations. What were some of your favorite tracks in the early days you reverse engineered to apply what you learned in your own music?
Oh, wow. The first thing I ever heard that made me realize that I can do what I basically still do, I make my own music, was a Prodigy track. And just hearing that one, that my buddies actually had made, separated some like drum samples of the original track, then had loops, parts of the original track, and then had added loops on top of it. And I think it was maybe just 4, maybe 8 layers, and hearing that was, the thing was, all of a sudden I realized that I can make my own music too. And like you said, I started analyzing other people's music. I was listening to, for instance, German band called Scooter. There was Sash, definitely their song Encore une fois, and Ecuador, for instance, that I was analyzing. And then a guy who later became my good friend and initially helped me produce my first 2 albums called JS16, Jaakko and Salovaara. He was already a known producer in Finland. In fact, he had won the Producer of the Year award, I think 2 or 3 times in a row around the time I got to know him and started working with him. And some of his earlier productions were some stuff that I definitely was listening back and forth and in and out and tried to figure out how they worked.
Yeah, well, speaking of him, I know that it's so important to find collaborators to work with, especially in the early days as a musician, and you were able to find him, Jaakko and Salovaara, from JS16. Why do you feel the dynamic between the two of you worked so well together in the beginning, and what should aspiring musicians look for in a potential collaborator?
They worked really well because he knew shit and I didn't. He was a really well-known producer and a DJ in Finland at that time. He also has classic music background. He played cello in a city orchestra there, and his parents were into that. And then he also knew keyboards, picked up the guitar and played that, and he was also good with percussion. I looked up to him, but somehow he also saw, I don't know what, like a talent or a good track or 2 in me, and we got along really well. We got to know each other quite well quickly while sitting in a studio extensively. Kind of does that, but I consider myself a really lucky guy, him sort of taking me under his wing. But later on I also realized that, because in the beginning I was looking up to him, and then I was in the studio with him, and he was really quick and he knew his way around his equipment and kind of like the music creation process, which was very new to me. And I mean, I was basically a radio listener at that time, or CD compilation listener, and I wasn't a DJ, so getting into that world took me a good while. But he wasn't really a teacher, but that situation was a teacher, and he taught me things, but he didn't like, hey, so today's lesson is this and that. But I learned by following what he did. We talked about stuff, and I had my own ideas, but I definitely didn't have the professional mindset or skill set to realize what I wanted to get out of my head or what I heard in my head. And I don't know, like actually you asking that and thinking back, it is actually quite cool that he gave me so much, or gave me so much of his time and the effort. But at the same time, I guess he heard something in my music, what I'd done, especially in the beginning. Sandstorm was the first track that he got interested in. We produced it together after I'd made my demo version of it, and the composition didn't really change, but the form of the track, like how it was made to an extended edit or mix, for DJ play, for instance, I didn't kind of have that. I didn't have intros and outros, and I didn't sort of even understand that kind of stuff at that point yet. So he was crucial to that kind of thing, and for the track to actually be able to be distributed and played by DJs.
Awesome. And what are the biggest light bulb moments you've discovered after music production, after examining your favorite songs? Like, what did you learn?
Yeah, well, I kind of touched it, but that was about my song or my tracks and working with, at that point, Jaakko. But in general, so when I started, when Sandstorm was released, it became big quite quickly. And I was not an DJ. I didn't feel that I was a professional musician. I just all of a sudden was in a situation where I was asked to go play live because there was demand, because the track started getting big. And so when I started doing that, I played my own tracks, and it was more a concert than a DJ set. So I might have played a track till the end, or whatever end I edited it to be, and then I had possibilities to tweak stuff live, of course, but they were more or less the tracks that we made in the studio. And then there would be a track end, maybe claps or woohoo from the crowd, and then I start another track. So it was more like a show or a concert. When I learned how to DJ myself, technically while I was doing those live shows as well, but then when I learned to DJ and I started playing other people's music, it's definitely, I don't know if there was one light bulb moment, but constant light bulb moments where you play a track and you mix it, then next time you mix it a little different, next time you play different tracks back to back, and you start just hearing what works together and what works in those individual tracks. And I'd say me starting to DJ and professionally be booked as a DJ, sort of being at one point comfortable enough with that, because it's quite different from playing just your own music. That's the best thing that could have happened to me, because then it gave me the perspective from both sides, and I started automatically and like automatically, subconsciously, but also consciously steering my music towards the structures of an actual DJ extended edit and this and that, and then when you hear how a track builds and how it drops and whatnot, it's kind of natural to hopefully not directly copy stuff, but adopt ideas and be influenced by stuff. So still every day when I DJ, there are these like, this sounded good like that. How about I figure out how to make that in my own track or in my next set again, but with different tracks.
And having started out, as you call it, a noisemaker, what do you tend to enjoy more now, DJing and being on the road, performing live, or producing in the studio? And has that changed for you, or has it always been the case?
In the beginning, I was really, really excited, obviously, to start touring, playing live, and I still continue being really excited about the situation where I'm DJing. The travel, I wish there was like a teleportation machine that I could skip the 9-hour flight from Helsinki to JFK, for instance. That's not maybe what I find pleasure in, but I think for my kind of producer and artist and DJ, it's just a yin and yang of it to have both of those sides. And I think I'm still as excited when I do my thing in front of an audience as that I was back then. But like I said, initially I didn't have that viewpoint at all, because I was just a a lone noisemaker in my studio, and my biggest dream was to just have a local DJ play a track that I burned on a CD, just because I wasn't a DJ at that point. You can learn from other people's music, but then also it's pretty cool to say fly from Helsinki to New York, work on a track on your way here, render the final version, put it, some people use USB sticks in the players. I use software called Tractor, put it in Tractor and play it tonight. And I don't know if you can get more immediate chain of events and then the reaction, whether it's good or bad. And if it's good, then I'm like, yeah, I just made it. And if it's bad, then I'll just mix in another track really quickly and don't tell anybody.
Totally. So yeah, let's talk about your new music. I got to hear your new single, Outlaws. Is the first in over 3 years that you're releasing. And I'm curious to know who's singing on the track and how did it come about?
Yeah, long story. 2019, I visited my buddy Jaakko Manninen, who's now house buddy on the record as well, and his studio in Cali, in Oceanside. We're old friends, and he's actually made like 9 or something music videos for me right now.
Oh, wow.
He made the Outlaws music video as well. We were talking like, we both have families, we both have a busy job schedule when we're home, and then we're both kind of do gigs as well. We haven't been out partying ourselves like that. We're just providing the music often for other people. And then when we're home with the family. So what would we want to hear if we went out? And then it kind of expanded, like it would be cool to get like the old gang back together and just go and let loose for one night. So we created this track, the instrumental of Outlaws, with like distorted 909 drums, kind of like you would have had back in the day at a rave. And we found some sort of old school Chicago house stabs and used those kind of things. We put a little bit of my doo-doo-doo in there as well for good measure. And then we mixed it up with kind of like, I had this anthemic synth thing that is now in a breakdown and build up. Put that together. The demo was quite similar, but not as long as well, actually, I don't know if you heard the radio edit or extended.
I think I heard the radio edit.
Yeah, so, well, it was that long then, but it was very similar to what you heard now, minus the vocal. And so I told Jaakko that there's like, you could use it as an instrumental, but I had this vision for vocal. The track sat almost 2 years on my hard drive, and then I came across Oscar, a Finnish singer, songwriter, producer who records and produces his own vocals and actually makes dance music and pop stuff as well. And he, I told the rave and going back to partying and old school this and that, and he in a couple of days delivered the vocal that I basically just like dropped in, mixed it a little bit, and that's the track really. And I'm so very happy about it. And the crazy thing is that it kind of, now it's almost 3 years old for me, actually soon 4. And I'm quite excited to finally let it loose. And any day now, that's going to happen. But I've been playing it out, and it works quite well. And I don't know, there's something to it that is just very satisfying even before it's out, because everything that happened with it was very organic. It was based on just fun, emotional stuff, good talks with my buddies. And Oscar is quite a new friend now. I mean, I've known him for 2-3 years now, but he's also a really good dude. And I've toured with him a little bit, and he sang it live several times with me. So there's all kind of this sort of emotional stuff to it, or like attachment. And then the funniest and the coolest thing is that we made a music video that is sort of, we arranged our own little rave, and it's quite funny. I don't know how else to describe it. You just have to see it when it comes out.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your new label called Vibing Out. I know that you had En Masse Music as well. What's the differences between the two, and just tell me a little bit more about the new label.
Differences, well, I don't know. Differences, kind of similar idea in a sense that with Randy we wanted to sign stuff that we just got as demos and liked. It didn't really matter if it was a no-name, small name, big name. We just wanted to release tracks that we would have played in our DJ sets. And it's kind of same idea in a sense now that we sort of closed down shop with En Masse Music because at that time we weren't quite ready or quite capable enough to handle all the business side, and we should have either hired somebody or many people, or we should have like put our DJ and producer careers in the back burner to run the label, and that just wasn't happening at that time. And so I don't know, I'm hoping to do that side a little better, and my wife is actually sort of in the back end of that as well, and we'll see how that goes. Also, times are different. The in practice tools, what you can do online, and what you can, how you can handle accounting and all kind of back end stuff, contracts and whatnot, is quite different right now than 10 years ago. So there's a difference. I don't know. First, we're gonna release my stuff in the first, I don't know, half a year, and then when we get sort of kind of like through my releases, sort of the template stuff running, how we want to do stuff and what we concentrate on, then I'm going to start finding other people's music to release as well, and that's quite exciting. And the name Vibing Out comes from my Vibing Out stream that I've now done since basically the COVID lockdowns started, and I've got quite a nice community, 400 to 600 people every Friday when I'm not touring with me on my Twitch channel. Amazing mods, and I don't know, it's just a feel-good community, and I kind of wanted to honor the community with naming the label Vibing Out as well.
Awesome. And speaking of Twitch, what's a memorable moment you've had on Twitch during Dial It In?
So Dial It In was, I haven't done that in a while now because of just haven't had time, and it required quite a lot of prep work. I couldn't really say which guest or which peer would have been the better or whatever, but I think my first one was with Mayan, and he's such a teddy bear. It was fun doing that. But then, I mean, I've had Dave Dresden, I've had Thrill Seekers, Steve Hellstrip, Andy Moore, Baba from Anjuna Beats, and Above and Beyond, several people, Cesaro and Pitch, and all of those were really cool in different ways, because I've known many of those guys quite well, but then having a little bit of an interviewer aspect to it, but then it was more like just notes if the talking stopped at some point, and it never did. So it was funny because I spent a good amount of time going through their discography, Wikipedia, their websites, social media, finding talking points, and then it never went there really. Yeah. So it just became this organic talk, and I've gotten the best feedback from the people because it became this thing where me and like a friend or trusted peer, we were just talking and people got to kind of eavesdrop. So it's sort of fun vibe to it. And I think the people who ended up watching those were quite happy about sort of the sort of low-key eavesdropping thing. And I don't know if there was there's been some funny moments and some quite deep moments as well. So I don't know. I actually should. I have a good list of names that I haven't chatted with yet from my peers, and then I have a couple like quite big names that, or surprising names that might not have much to do with electronic dance music. But we'll see if and when I have time for it.
For sure. So with the rise of Microsoft's OpenAI ChatGPT being free to the public, AI has recently been top of mind for me. And Microsoft also recently showcased a tool called Valley that, after being fed just 3 seconds of somebody's voice, can synthesize audio of them appearing to say anything. AI systems can produce clones of someone's voice with even small samples to train on. And David Guetta just used an AI to generate Eminem's voice and lyrics in a set. Google recently showed off a tool called Music LM, not yet released to the public, that can transfer hums and text into actual music in a variety of styles. Have you played around at all with any of these AI tools yet? And if so, what do you think of them so far? If not, what scares you or excites you most about them?
Well, we have this producer group on WhatsApp. We talk about all kinds of stuff, but AI has definitely been one of those topics in various ways. Some people are worried about them taking our jobs, some jobs, but not, we can always do our thing. But the main thing, obviously, is that that is even a likely thing that some companies that now rely on actual human content creators generating music, they might be replaced to a point by AI generated stuff for which they don't have to pay copyright or other royalty things. That's one of the things that is concerning in many producers and writers' minds. But outside of that, I think there's mostly excitement in at least that group that I'm in terms of there's already been like machine learning and AI type systems and algorithms in production world, in the plugins, both synth or like chord generation tools or then now there's companies like Isotope, for instance, who make plugins that they have assistance. So you load a plugin on a track and then you let the plugin listen to what is there, and it will recognize if it's a guitar sound, if it's a bass sound, if it's vocal, if it's a synth sound, sort of generically it recognizes, and it suggests what should be done to it. So EQ there, like that, right. Boost and cut and this and that, add a compressor, this and that. And I actually personally like those tools a lot because they often give me starting points that I wouldn't have thought myself, and not because I don't know how, but it just, at least I don't know about others, but I'm set in my ways and I have certain kind of viewpoint from the get-go, say how to affect a vocal. And then if I let the assistant analyze it and suggest something, it's not, I haven't ever just stayed there, okay, cool, render, whatever, and use that. But it gives me a good starting point, and then you can go from there. And the same goes for like, there's sort of dumb chord generators that, you give it a little bit of input, one note, or write a melody or something, and it analyzes that, and then it suggests what kind of chord progression or what chords, not even a progression, but then you'll create the progression yourself. But now there's stuff that you could just hum a thing and it actually writes the chord progression for you. If somebody's thinking of just using that blatantly, this is how I'm going to make my money, I'm going to just use everything and whatever, then I think that's a little bit of a wrong starting point. But if you're thinking of it as, point of inspiration and learning, like for instance these assistants that suggest how to affect a vocal or something, that's really, really good teaching tool. Like it teaches you to listen to, for instance, if it finds resonance points in a vocal, next time you'll know how to listen for that, and then you can whether use an assistant or you can just take an EQ and EQ it yourself like that. And that side of it is very exciting for me. And the legalities of, say, Guetta doing the Eminem thing, I don't know. I'm actually excited, not in his case or Eminem, just in general. I'm quite excited to see who and where is going to be the big lawsuit first, and what is it going to be about, how they're going to rule, because new laws are going to have to be written, new procedures and standards around it, because it's pretty crazy. Like you said, you can emulate almost anything. And for instance, in this Guetta doing the Eminem bit, he's not using it. He's not going to like commercially use it.
Right.
I guess. But at the same time, he's emulating Eminem, one of the most known voices in the world. So what are the consequences? And clearly that he was after something with it, and so I don't know. It's interesting. I was just thinking about it because there's, for instance, now the lawsuit with Never Gonna Give You Up, remade by wow, now I forgot. It's like a rap version where they basically paid for the composition, but then they emulated all the instruments very exactly like the original, and then also the singer was purposely sounding like Rick Astley, and Rick Astley or his party sued for basically, I don't know, impersonating the voice. I don't know how that works, and that's also an interesting case. I'm not actually really saying one side or the other, but it's just interesting to follow how those kind of things go.
Yeah.
And that's not AI, but it's still like emulating something. So if somebody were to make a full track emulating, say, Eminem or Adele or whoever, and try to release it where the composition nor lyrics would be of those artists, but the sound would be, or the singing style, then it's, I don't know.
Interesting gray area right now.
It really is, and it's just weird. Similarly, when we're talking about music production, NFTs are a big thing still, or again, that are talked about, but there's also huge gray areas in the law, and a lot of people just jump there, which is fine, but then they might be bitten at some point, because if the laws catch up, but if they don't work the way they were thinking initially. So that's quite interesting. So the technology is something that I really like, but then also it makes you think. Sometimes I just want to tinker in my own little studio and not think about anything, just make music.
Feel you on that. Have you accepted crypto as a form of payment yet? And what are your thoughts on NFT and blockchain technology?
I haven't accepted crypto. It's not so much that I haven't accepted. I haven't been in that kind of a circle, I guess. I know a lot of people who do crypto stuff, both like just Bitcoin, Ethereum, all kinds of trading, and or just sitting on it, seeing the price go up and down or whatnot, and then NFT stuff as well. I haven't done that myself like that, but I was a part of this music platform called Tune originally, and now it's called, is it Rocket? It was really exciting and interesting thing, but it didn't integrate and interact with the real world at all, so it was basically its own closed environment. And because it didn't have, say, a Justin Bieber in it or Ed Sheeran, it didn't blow up to the greater real world. And I think that's one of the difficulties in the world of thinking like, so leaving out the middleman, what is one of the purposes of let's do smart contracts, and we don't need record companies and this and that. And I'm not saying you do need them, but there's sides to it. And like I said, when I was involved in that, I actually had one track on that platform, and I made those smart contracts. That was, I think, 2017 maybe, so quite early. And so I was disappointed because it didn't like translate into real world.
Yeah.
And it was still real music that I made, and I know of others as well. But then I also realized that there's so many legal things that don't sort of jive. Having publishers and having record companies in the real world, like, for instance, there was no way I would have gotten my track that was only released there to be played on the radio, because no radio is going to play a track that is not registered anywhere.
Right.
Officially play. There might be some dance music programs or whatever that would, but I didn't have a representation towards any, say, TV or film companies. But had I had one and they would have picked up my track, then I would have directly sold it myself. So 100% of the proceeds would come to me. So there's sides to it that were interesting and exciting and luring. But then again, like I said, it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And I know Audius too. Have you played around with that platform at all?
Yeah, it's kind of similar too. And I think that's probably the most advanced and biggest one that it seems to be that it's working, but it's still small compared to, say, Spotify.
It does have some good backers though, so that has that going for it so far.
And like I said, I've said many times, but it's interesting to follow and see where that goes. And like the NFT stuff, I can't say that I know that much of it, but then thinking of NBA, NFL, all the big commercial platforms have their fan merch and whatnot now also in digital form, which is basically their NFTs.
Right.
And they're tradable and whatnot. And once that kind of stuff happens, and those platforms, big organizations, bring it to mainstream, to regular people, and they can actually interact and maybe not even talk about NFTs, but they're just like digital collectibles and whatever they are, and you don't think about it through the crypto or whatever who that many people think that it is. So then as the, as enough people are jumping in, maybe it becomes everyday stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to take some time, but eventually get there.
Yeah.
And last question, have you played around with using different frequencies in your music? And what's a plugin or piece of tech that you'd love to play around with if you haven't had the chance to try playing around with frequencies yet?
Play around with frequencies, I mean, everything is some sort of a frequency. I'll take that a little, I'm not probably answering your question, like meaning everything is a frequency. I do try to figure out how to use, like, if there's gaps, if there's too much of some frequency here and there, then it's about mixing and equalizing and this and that. But then if we're thinking of a little different thing, I have a couple of fans that are deaf, and they still go out and they dance to music, but then, I mean, it's vibration that they sense, and they go with that. And that's been interesting, trying to think from their perspective. And I haven't been like, using earmuffs or whatever just to try and mimic that, but been thinking how I would make, for instance, the beat really clear so that they could grasp it, or how I would make not just the kick, but like divisions, so that you could actually feel those vibrations to, the vibration of the rhythm, but also the different frequencies, because it's how well and how separated you can mix that affects how somebody can sense that, because the sense is not like of your feet or your stomach area, for instance, not as accurate as your ears would be. So that's one thing. And as a sidetrack, my buddy has actually worked as a VJ for a deaf rapper.
Oh, wow.
And so he raps sign language, and he has a hearing rapper with him who raps normally.
Awesome.
And on those gigs, they actually have vibrating dance floors, and then they have scented smokes. So they try to cater for the deaf crowd, or they're not all deaf, but they are have difficulties hearing proper, and so tickling other senses as well. It's quite cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was fantastic talking with you today.
Oh, cool. Thanks, guys.